The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Sustainable Voice. This is your host, Ashish. New year, new format, and I have a co-host. Her name is Leigh. Leigh, say hi to the audience.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here with you, Ashish.
So I kind of got the feeling you guys just got tired of listening to me. I mean, our viewership and our has been going up considerably. Our viewer base, the downloads has been increasing. So tell your friends, make sure you're actually tuning in now. This year's going to be a fun format, Leigh. You and I can talk for hours.
Oh my gosh. I hope no one gets bored listening to us, but I sure do get a lot out of our conversations, and this is going to be fun. I'm really excited.
It's okay. I'll track their IP address if they get bored. We'll know who they are. We'll find them. It's okay. So, we were experimenting with this in terms of having a co-host. We started doing a couple of episodes that were talking about things you wish you knew. But really, what I noticed when we had a co-host, and especially whenever I've interacted with you, Leigh, we've just had a different dynamic. We've been able to actually talk about things, and you and I have worked together for the better part of almost what, 7, 8 years now, I think.
Yeah, I think it has been 7, 8 years for
Yeah.
sure. And I learn something every time I'm with you. I feel like I come away a better person. So I'm excited to be along on the ride with you on this journey around the world and all
Well,
these great topics.
I'm super excited as well. And those of you who watched the last episodes, you know that I get very passionate about some of these topics, and Leigh does too. And what's really cool about this, and I want to share this with all of you that are listening, there's a reason that I asked Leigh to do this with me. She is one of the most amazing women you'll ever meet. Leigh, you set you basically blazed the trail for women in the Coast Guard, didn't you? And for expedition cruises, didn't you? I know you're a bit shy about talking about this, but I'm gonna put you on the spot because they're listening. So go ahead.
Ah, that's so funny. Well, as it turns out, this year is the 50th year for women in the Coast Guard. And so I actually was in the Coast Guard about 10 years after women started, but I definitely was one of the first in a non-traditional role. So I was at a a search and rescue station on the Oregon coast, driving those boats that do the 360. And I did never do that, but it
Oh, come
started
on.
off yeah. 4 years of that was good, and I enjoyed it, and I was really lucky to be with a lot of people men who supported me in a non-traditional role. But what it did was launch me into the travel industry after that and into expedition cruising, which was just incredible, and eventually led me to you, which is great. So yeah.
And I'm so happy. And you were the first expedition cruise captain, as I understood it. Did I have that right?
In the United States,
There
there
you go.
was thankfully, again, I just credit a lot of people who took a big chance on me and thought that I could do it. So I did, and it was great, and it's just been it's been an incredible journey. And what I've enjoyed about being connected with you as well is just how you have recognized other women in other countries. I mean, we're lucky here in the United States because women have, you know, gone leaps and bounds
Mhm.
you know, and other countries are a little further behind us. But, during the pandemic, everything we did and all the spotlights that you were able to shine on other women in other countries, and
Oh, thank
it
you.
was incredible.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And the focus of our podcast is big successes in small places, right? And think about this, right? First of all, in the US, I believe there's no smaller place than Oregon. Just saying. I'm just saying. And what's why, and this is one of the reasons. So those of you that are listening to this right now, this is the reason why I asked Leigh. There is no bigger success than having a co-host who blazed that trail. So anytime you guys are on any kind of adventure boat, I don't care if you're on a ferry, I don't care if you're on a cruise ship. If you walk by the captain's bridge and you see a female captain, you remember my co-host, because if not for her, there's a good chance that person's not there. So there's no bigger success than a small place than my co-host right here, which is why she's hosting with me. So going through for this year and forever long as she wants to do this, she's going to be my co-host on the Sustainable Voice. And you're going to be hearing two voices going forward, new formats. You don't get to hear me just droning on the whole time, which is great. And you know what? Clearly, some of the topics that we had last year, from locally owned hotels to other ones, hit a tone with our listeners. They hit a tone because we noticed that some of those ones, the downloads just went through the roof. So where, you can find us now on so many different platforms for this podcast. And it's great because of the fact that we're striking a nerve with our topics, and it's hitting on several ones. There was one episode that we recorded, oh God, almost 2 years ago. And it's still being one of the most downloaded episodes we have. So it's clearly struck a nerve. So our goal for this year, Leigh, is for you and I, in our conversations, to strike a nerve with our audience. What do you say?
I'm here for it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. This is great. And we were talking about the Coast Guard, and we were talking about expedition cruising, and vice versa. I learned so much just listening to you. I mean, if we go back before the pandemic, and Zoom was just becoming a thing, and GoToMeeting was becoming just a thing, and all these different platforms were becoming just a thing. Go fast forward. If you had told me 10 years ago I was going to host a podcast, if you had told me 10 years ago I was going to host a podcast with somebody as legendary as you, yet here we are. So I think, we've got a bunch of topics that we want to get to. And we're going to be really jumping in terms of this, but let's talk about the podcast. You've been a listener. You've actually heard our episodes. You've been a listener. What were your thoughts about this podcast as you were one of our viewers?
Oh man, I mean, the thing that I love most is just the core of it, which is the small, like bringing these small stories to life, which are actually huge, and just how one person can just make seemingly a small step can make such a big difference, and that is what you do so well, is just bringing out the core in people. And I love that, like all those small moments and all those little live streams that we did even during the pandemic, and shining a light on people who were just, they're not out for the glory. They're just out to make a difference in their community, and the ripple effect of that. And I feel every time I listen to your podcast, I just feel a little smarter, feel a little more savvy. I do. And I feel a little bit more empowered, even in my own community, to make a difference and to be okay with maybe just a small step.
Right. Well, I love
into something big. Yeah. So
I mean, the feeling is absolutely mutual. As you guys can see, by the way, we get along really well. And so, that's one of the reasons why having Leigh as a co-host with me is just because the admiration goes both ways, as you guys can see. And you were talking about live streams in Egypt. One of my favorite ones was in Egypt, and it was actually with Farah. And we've talked about this. It was like watching my little sister grow up. It was really cool. You remember she was sitting, what did she do? She was sitting in her car at the end, but she was taking us to restaurants and eating things, and I was getting hungry watching her.
Yeah.
Did you remember?
I do. And she was amazing. And I mean, the thing that struck me about Farah is her courage, because being a woman in Egypt is not like being a woman in the United States, and just her courage to be out after dark, to be out, fearlessly, talking about her country, and to be helping women in the way that she does, and just all of her programs and everything. It was like this ancient country who is preserving that ancient history, but at the same time very modern and forward thinking. And it just it made me want to go to Egypt, actually, after just for that layer. I mean, I've always thought of Egypt from a historical point of view, but not really spent much time thinking about the people, and particularly the women. And
well, she talked at length about this, because one of the things that, and I said this I think I might have said this to you, but after post-pandemic, so 2021, when the pandemic was just, we weren't at the height of it, but we were on the other side of it, and when Egypt just took off like a bottle rocket. in terms of tourism. And one of the things that Farah said was, and her father said this too, and I agree with it. And those of you who don't know, by the way, Farah, I've known Farah since she was 10 years old. We basically, I mean, I was 15, she was 10. Her father is like my second father. And he's known me since I was 15, and he's 70 something right now. And I think that's the key thing is that they both talked about the fact that what we have experienced in terms of this tourism boom to Egypt, it's the high season or the season or the attention they were waiting for 10 years. And Farah on that live stream, this was big, I think it was during the pandemic that we did this, and she was talking about how tourism is the largest employer of women. A lot of people will look at, and I was just talking to somebody today, as a matter of fact, and look at different countries of different faith and say, well, Egypt gets roped in with this country, this country, this country, this country. And you go, not necessarily. And Farah says this, and I've seen it firsthand, is that Egyptians don't call themselves Arabs or this or that. They're Egyptians. They call themselves Egyptians. And Farah talked about how tourism is the leading driver to gender equality because it is the largest employer of women in tourism. And as you said, what she does, she's worked with the United Nations and kind of going out. That became a huge part of that, and it's now transcended. I mean, every time I go, we have different Egyptologists, and there are more and more women that are working as Egyptologists. There's more of them in Parliament, and it is incredible to see, absolutely incredible. And Netflix has a whole series on Cleopatra. It's not done very well, but they have a whole series there. It's not factually accurate, but then nothing ever really is on any of these platforms. But it's the fact that they're finally coming on. It's not some big blockbuster movie. It's not an afterthought where Cleopatra is there when they're talking about Alexander. It's the other way around. He's an afterthought because she's the focus, and that's the principle of it. And that lends us into the archaeological side of things as well, right? You mentioned that Egypt has always been on your list. You and I have talked about that. Why? Tell me why Egypt has been on your bucket list.
Just because it's such an ancient place, and I mean, I'm sure there are lots of places in the world who've put a high value on preserving their national treasures and their history, but it seems like Egypt is the OG of that, the goat of that, because I don't think any country, I mean, you probably know better than I, but I feel like Egypt has put such a high value on, preserving their history. And not only that, but I think also a high value on continuing to discover. I feel like we're on the tip of the iceberg with that. I mean, I know you were just there. What do you think?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I was funny, I was when I was there, one of the things that we've always talked about, just read these articles about new discoveries. And I remember, not this last trip just in November, but a year before, I was up in a hot air balloon looking out, and I don't think I've ever seen more tents like those discovery tents popped up where you've got there's obviously something that's been found, so they pop up this little tent to cover the area, and so that there's work being done underneath there. And I was up in a hot air balloon in Luxor, and normally you'd see maybe one here, one there. I saw at least 10. They were in the Valley of the Kings. They were up near Hatshepsut's temple. I mean, it was just incredible. And some of them up on the mountain and whatnot. And I just said, this is incredible. This is the history that we're all longing to find. We're going to learn new things here. And one of the things that I then came back, and I was talking to Farah, and I was talking to her family, and then of course, I'm a history nerd, so I was like, I need to go read, I need to go look up, and I've been going to Egypt since I was a teenager, right? So you'd think I would know this, but clearly I'm not. I don't retain attention well. But this was something I saw. Do you know that according to National Geographic, only 1% of Egypt has been excavated? 1%. I thought it was 20%. It's not even that, it's 1. Now, it's debatable a number, but could you think about that for a second? 1%?
It boggles my mind because, and this will show my ignorance about all of that and the archaeology of the area. I truly thought they would be further along, and it
Right.
sounds, I mean, it's like we're not even at the tip of the iceberg with 1%,
Right.
It's just That's crazy.
It was, and I never thought it would get this, where it would be this much. I mean, all the tents I see is still 1%. And there was a mandate, actually. I remember when the unrest happened in 2010, when the Arab Spring, as some people call it, when the unrest occurred all over these countries, specifically in Egypt. I remember, as a way to come back, I was actually at a meeting down here in South Florida, and the Minister of Tourism at the time for Egypt was there, and he got up on stage and he said something that really, really just struck me. He said, "We must discover ourselves first. We are going to put a focus on rediscovering our own heritage. We are the ones who created civilization. We are the ones," and he said that, I'm paraphrasing, but he was basically trying to say that Egypt was the first fully functional civilization in history. And he said, we are the ones that, and he said, one of the sentences he said was, "We are the ones that gave life to modern civilization because of what ancient civilization we created." And he was talking as a proud Egyptian, right? And I remember that sentence. And then he said that we're going to rediscover. And sure enough, when he said that, all of a sudden, 2014, 15, 16, 17, I mean, you started seeing just this, oh, this has been discovered, this has been discovered, a lost city's been discovered, this has been discovered. All of a sudden, now they're finding burial chambers for mummies with nobles saying, "Whoa, what we thought would be buried here isn't what we saw here." They found a new chamber in the pyramid. I found a brand new chamber, which I actually just went down into in November. I went into that chamber, and I mean, I've been going to this pyramid since I was a teenager, and all of a sudden this whole room was there that nobody knew about. How is that even possible? So of course I came back, and I'm like, okay, I can't get enough of this. I got to go back. I got to this, and I remember just when I saw all these discoveries, and then I saw this stat that just blew my mind. Check this out. You'll love this, okay? In the 20th century, the pace of discoveries in Egypt was roughly one discovery every 10 years, right? They'd find something meaningful once every 10 years. And now I get technology limits how much they find versus what they're doing now with sonar, radioactive dating, everything else. There's obviously more new technology to help find more, but 1 in 10 years, one meaningful discovery. You know what they're averaging since 2018?
What?
6 discoveries every year. 6 meaningful discoveries every year. 1 every 10 years to 6 every year. I don't even know what to say.
Well, that blows my mind. But what blows my mind and that you glossed over was that you went down at one of those. Dude, Ashish, how in the world do you get connected into with archaeologists who are letting you go down into active sites? That's insane. That blows my mind.
I wish I could say it was my likable personality, but clearly that wasn't it. And of course, when I told my family, the first thing they said was, "You watch the mummy movies, right? Don't bring anything back with you." So I was like, yeah, no. This is
no
a brand new change.
Please.
Yeah, no curses back, no, nothing like that. And you know what it was? It was just, I remember this 2021, I had gone back to Egypt. This was just after the pandemic had ended, and there was a new discovery in 2018. I'd watched this documentary called "The Secret Tomb of Saqqara." I think it was on Netflix. It was really well done, and it was about this tomb of the noble named Waite. It was in Saqqara, and it was actually hidden in plain sight, right? I remember looking at this place, and I remember looking at Google Earth saying, "Where is this?" And sure enough, when you go to Google Earth, these sites sometimes are a bit, they're either colored off or something for security purposes. But I remember seeing that and saying, we have driven past that spot every time we go into the Step Pyramid or into Saqqara. I have driven past that spot since I was a teenager, more times than I can count. And all these years, that was sitting there. And nobody knew. And so when we came through, the archaeologist who was there were 2. There was Dr. Waziri and there was Dr. Mohammed. that actually the two of them were talking about this, and both of them, by the way, were in the documentary, right? They were in that documentary, and I sat down, I got to meet them, and the reason I got invited with them was so Farah's father, who is like my second father, his name is Kamal. He is a graduate of the College of Archaeology. It's just going back years, but they were in school at relatively young. So this is basically relationship through alumni is part of it. So I got to meet these people. In fact, Dr. Waziri actually signed his book. He wrote this really great book and he signed it to me on the internet. It's sitting at home, and I plan on actually gifting it to my son as a graduation present when he graduates from high school, and saying, this is a book you keep with you because of what he wrote. And when I started talking to them and to the crew, what dawned on me was that these guys don't, that documentary gave them spotlight, but they don't act like the spotlight's on them, right? They're not all over all the different television channels. They're not on the news media. They're not this. They're just going about their day. They're focusing on just, again, following through with that mandate of discovering as much as possible. So when I went there and then we're going through Waite's tomb, and Dr. Muhammad is talking about what it was like when they went in, how it was covered in sand and they had to dig it out and whatnot, and they're showing me all these tombs. And then I remember walking into the old Egyptian museum when I was there and seeing the artifacts over there. And sure enough, as you walk in the first floor and you walk back towards the back of the room before you go up to the subsequent levels, there is a statue of a head, and the way that it looks like Darth Vader's helmet, right? The way it's actually put out, that is exactly the type of facial figure and the design that was found in that tomb. So of course my mind started racing, saying, this tomb has been here all along. See, this was discovered in 2018. It was a documentary. So that's how I got into it. So, you know what happens, right? When you ask questions and you start discovering, some stuff comes up that you're not really liking, and other stuff comes up that you really enjoy. Well, let me ask you a question. What is the craziest thing you've ever done in terms of just when you go back to school, go back to when you're in the Coast Guard, what is the most memorable thing you've done that you could say shaped the way of your life? And I'm pretty sure you're going to blow me out of the water with this answer, but go ahead.
Oh my God. I probably needed to prepare for that. Probably, I'm trying to think it probably was something reckless that I don't know. So the most recent thing that comes to mind for me is, so now in my current incarnation of who I am, I restore houses and things like that. So I bought this house that you couldn't even see the house. It looked condemned. And but actually, now that I think about it, maybe I was an archaeologist. I was. This house is insane. It was so scary. But anyway, and my husband looked at it and he says, I don't see your vision. I can't see it. And I'm like, I see it very clearly. I know, so yeah, that was probably it. Buying this crazy house and then actually bringing, my daughter's living in it now. But yeah, that thing was.
So you could have been actually. And you know
Yeah.
what? So, okay, let me ask you a question. As you were bringing in that house to the front, like you were obviously discovering what was in there, restoring it, and making it look like a house again, compared to how you found it, what sticks out to you more? How it looks now or how you found it? What sticks out to you more?
Oh, totally how I found it. How I found it. And like the history and the story, and I still feel all of that, like in the things we found, for everything from Coke bottles to like dolls. I mean, we found, because there was a lot of possessions still inside it, but like the years of history and the family history, and it goes all the way back to the Civil War, this house.
Wow.
So yeah, and the family is still in the area. So yeah, I do. I feel all of that. And I still feel it when I'm on that land and on that property. Yeah. So I can see how invested, you must have felt that same.
100%. Yeah, I'm just thinking because, God, that's an amazing answer. Wow.
I wasn't, yeah, I don't know, that came out of me.
That came out perfect. I mean, guys, you see why I want her as a co-host? Well, I put her on the spot all the time, and never once has she let me down. What comes out of her mouth is profound. I was expecting something else. All of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? Just end the podcast right now. We're good. We covered everything. I mean, so this is what really, yeah, you're spot on, right?
The sense of place, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's
exactly.
the thing.
When I went in with these archaeologists, these are again local archaeologists, and what struck me was not just them, but their crew that was there. Because beyond this tomb, they're still digging, right? They're still doing all this excavation work. So as I go out there, he's painting this picture of how they found it. And I'm envisioning it like, okay, this covered in sand, how they got in here. Look how well preserved. And you could see in the preservation, the stuff that was under the sand is better preserved versus what was above the sand. You could see where the colors in the scripture and everything else, and just in the hieroglyphics and also in the carvings, you could see where it was better maintained or better preserved, because it was protected by the elements. So and you could see it right away, like as I'm watching, listening to him. So I'm hanging on his every word, and the whole time back in my mind, I'm picturing this and just going, that's amazing. And what got to me is I asked him the same question I asked you. What do you remember, how you found it or how it looks now? He goes, how I found it. Now, fast forward to just a few months ago, I was back there again. And I've always wanted to focus on these local archaeologists, because it's always about, the local scene versus the PR scene. There's all these archaeologists in Egypt that are always on TV, and they're always on, and they're, I call them glory hounds, right? There's not a television they don't like. Television camera they don't like. They're always, we say this as we're streaming on a podcast. The irony couldn't be better. But it's the fact that, they're very much so. And I mentioned to you, there's some things you don't like. And what I discovered on this last trip was one of them, who shall remain nameless. In Luxor, there's an archive. I believe it's in Luxor. There's an archive, and there were some tablets that were found in there from the 30s by different archaeology teams, right? So there's teams that come from the US, the UK, from France, from all over, and they're there with this sole mission. This person went in, found this tablet, and I remember, because I know the person who looks after the warehouse. He's kind of a friend of a friend. He's related to a friend of a friend, so we got to hear the story, and he has no reason to lie about it, right? I mean, he gains nothing by lying about it. Plus, I know his story to be credible. They took this tablet out, and this glory hound, for lack of better words, buried this in the sand when everyone was begging him not to do it. Buried it in the sand. When the camera showed up, he pretended to find it. That's not, yeah, I know, and that's not what this is supposed to be about. And it just, when I heard that, it was like the pit of my stomach just dropped. And I said, you mean this is being used as a hoax? All of this, the mandate was to discover our heritage, not take advantage of it, right? And I remember, and I see him on TV all the time, and and it makes me sick every time I see him. It's not because of anything else, except for the fact that, how did you get so lost? How did you take the mandate that was given out by your people, by your leader, forget about the president, but by your people, the people who took pride in their country? And I know it's a mandate because when we had the mummy parade in 2021 in April, when they moved the mummies from the old museum to the Museum of Civilization, there was this big production where they went, and they purposely took a road around this roundabout where these protests were just occurring in 2010. There was a mob there, and now all of a sudden there's this beautiful roundabout, and they're going through, and I remember watching this mummy parade, and the same people who were so proud of that mandate that was given in I think it was 2014, they were in tears. I remember, because I spoke to Pharaoh's father. He was in tears. I was talking to him as it was happening. He said, we have been waiting for this. And his exact words to me, he goes, as an Egyptian, I have never been prouder. I get goosebumps just talking about this. How do you go from that to having this person do that, bury this, and then pretend to find it? That's what drew me into these local archaeologists. Yeah, that's what drew me into them and said, "This is what it's all about. This is." And I remember, I sat with Farah and Gamal. I told them, I said, I want to get into the newest digs. I want to go down these mine shafts on a rope and whatnot. I swear, you watched the color drain from his face. He literally said, I had to show him. I said, look, what are you worried about? You worried I'm going to get hurt? Whatever bone you could think of, I've broken it already. So don't worry. You're not going to break me any more than I already am. I'm held together by duct tape. So I'm the original Gumby. Don't worry. Let's just go. It'll be fine. And he goes, yeah, but we have to get permission. Okay, no problem. But let's have a conversation. And I remember just talking to him, and I was so passionate about this, the fact that I am really just turns my stomach when this person who was, he's known as being somebody who's part of kind of corrupt, this glory hound archaeologist. And the fact that he's been called out for it and he still shows up on different television shows. The fact that he still charges exorbitant fees just to come out and give a talk or whatever the case. Meanwhile, these local archaeologists, like a Dr. Mohammed, like a Dr. Waziri, who, by the way, Dr. Waziri is the one who was heavily involved in making that mummy parade possible. But you'd never know it because he was never standing in front of a camera to say, look at me, look what I did. He never, ever did that. And I remember when I sat with him and he was signing my book, he said, I like your energy. You're a good person. You're a good man.
Aww.
He goes, you have good character. That means a lot to me coming from him.
Yeah.
So fast forward to this. I'm going to ask you this question. When you found that house, because this is going to relate to what I'm going to say next. When you found that house, and how'd you get through the house? Did you have to use a machete, or how'd you get through all that brush to get to the house?
I had to get somebody else with a lot more courage to do it for me. And yes, it was a machete, and
Right on.
I mean, to pull all this. And then I had to have somebody, the guy that was helping me with it wouldn't actually let me inside. He FaceTimed me and like as he could carefully get in through, but yeah, it was, but yeah, I mean, but I would go in there and just, once I could get in there and just spend hours just standing there and just looking around and.
All right, well, you'll love this. So a few months ago, I went back to that tomb, that tomb that was in the documentary, and they found a mummy of a lion cub in the shaft underneath where the tomb was. So they found a whole separate chamber underneath the chamber they had found. This is something else. Then you go to the back, and there's this big mummy burial chamber. So it's this mine shaft that goes down. They found a bunch of sarcophagi and mummies that are in there that are, again, under our noses that we've never seen. So this was where this vision really came in. Dr. Muhammad says, come with me, and his son is there. And I walk around, and I was with some people and walked to this hole in the ground. There is a man-made manual pulley system with somebody going like this. It was like out of an Indiana Jones movie. So we're basically strapping onto a rope with one foot in a basket, and there's these guys lowering us into this mine shaft like this, about 30 meters down. And they're having fun, and they're happy they're here. And one of the guys that was with me, his name is Brian. I'll never forget him. He's a personal hero of mine. I wish I could be half a father he is. And he had watched that documentary, and he walked up to all these workers that were there that were there, and he's like, I know you, I know you, I know you, I know you, I know you were here, I know you. And I'm watching him just my shots on the ground. Yeah, it's just, and I'm watching him going, God, these people get paid peanuts. Right? They are the local archaeologists are viewed with respect. The excavation crews, the local archaeologists will always take care of them, but they are not viewed the same way. And to have this person, they didn't understand a word he was saying, so we were translating for him. But for having a Westerner, who's, by the way, Brian is not he's a very tall man, right? So you really can't miss him. He stands out. He's 6'6". He makes me look small. And I'm 6'3", and he just stands out. And to have this gentle giant going into people who otherwise are used to just being silent heroes. Yeah. And I know you. You were here. I know you. I know you. Thank you. Thank you. You found this. Thank you. Thank you. You should have seen their faces.
Aww,
you should have seen their recognition. It was like you had made their day. So we went down this mine shaft with these people, lower down, and they're yelling and they're having fun. And in this chamber, there's Dr. Mohammed taking us through. And Dr. Mohammed is telling us, this is how we found this chamber. This was here. And above us, there's dirt falling. Because above us, they're digging. They're still working on the surface above us.
I would lose my mind.
There's 95 sarcophagi in here. The coffins are here. There is a mummy sitting on the stone right there. 3 more that are up, and one was a child. And this was here. This was. I mean, it all related to that first tomb, by the way. That first tomb that was in the documentary. And going down here, and coming back up, and I don't get starstruck too easily. My jaw was on the floor, and I remember I got up, looked at Dr. Muhammad, and I go, so where are we going next? And he goes, wait, hold on, wait. But I remember when we came back, so we said, okay, listen, we'll take care. So he said, can you settle the payment for my crew? Can you help us with this? Because we're not getting the funding properly that we need. So from there, it was just, look at this person who is not on TV, is not getting notoriety, doesn't speak much English, and his crew speaks no English. They are basically getting, they're now being recognized monetarily, right? Their remuneration doesn't reflect their knowledge, but now they're getting monetized the way they should be, and for the work they're doing. And the people who are with me came up and said, this is what real Egypt is. This is how you take pride in your heritage. And I remember came away saying, that's the moment. That's the moment that 20 years from now, when my son has kids and I'm talking to my grandkids, I'm going to be talking about this moment where I went down with him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you said your daughter's living in that house now. She must know how proud you are about the work you were doing.
Oh, for sure. And to your point, so is everybody else who worked on that house, and they still get in touch with me about that. So it's all about how we all have a part in history, and all of that.
Yep.
So fun. Good
well,
job.
this was, I mean, and it was amazing. So you guys can see, listen, you guys can see what this new format is about. We're going to be telling stories that are just on a whole different level, because it's about big successes in small places. So my co-host is one of those success stories. We've just talked about Dr. Waziri and Dr. Muhammad. These are success stories in Egypt right now. So I think this is really key. So Leigh, I'm going to turn it, I guess we're going to wrap up for today.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't feel like we're done with Egypt. So I feel like we've just scratched the surface, and maybe we can get some people to send us some questions. I think next time we're going to talk a little bit more about Egyptologists and guides versus guides, because you kind of piqued my interest on that early on. So I think we need to continue on with Egypt next time, and maybe we'll even have some questions.
All right. Well, all right. So you guys, you heard the boss. So let's download this episode, take a listen to it, and you know how to get a hold of me. You know how to get it over. So ask questions. If you're listening, and I have a challenge for all of you. If you're listening in your car, if you're listening wherever you are, and you hear this, and this, you start thinking about, start thinking about that moment where something that transforms you as a life. I will tell you, I went down into that chamber as one person, that came up as a different person. So think about, as you listen to this episode, I want you guys to all my listeners, I want you to think about what it is that you've done in your life that transformed you beyond the milestones like family and marriage and kids and success and whatnot. I'm talking about those transformative experiences that have changed who you are. So I agree, we're not done with Egypt. So stay tuned for the next episode. We're going to be talking about Egypt some more and talking about knowledge in different forms. But I hope you enjoyed this. Here's to Leigh, here's to a great 2024. We're going to have an amazing array of episodes this year.
I agree. I'm excited.
There we go. Till next time, everybody.
Till next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.